Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel, and wanted to say hi to all the members out there. I haven't been around too much, having to work now, so that kind of sucks. And I know that members have been dropping away, so I thought I would at least kind of stream, give you guys some kind of content. And wanted to introduce the Redefined Living joining us today.
Hey, everyone. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man. And we also have George Bond, who will be in here soon. And the reason I'm doing this stream specifically on the rock layers and geologic column is because of a thing that was made. Let's see, where is it? Right here. On Standing for Truth. You can see this video here on the right was done 3 days ago. It was an interview with Ken Hovind. And there were questions that were coming in about the geologic column. And as you know, when you're put on the spot, especially in a live performance, when somebody throws something specific at you, one, you're kind of confined with the time that you're allowed to answer. And then another problem is only a certain amount of things are going to come to your head. And for instance, when they said, prove that the rock layers are not ages, the first thing that came to his mind were polystrate trees. These are trees that go through different geologic columns that are predicted to be ages. And I wanted to go over a lot more today than just that. And I'm glad that George Bond is going to be joining us because he went over one of those pieces of evidence, and he can elaborate on it here as long as he has his presentation ready. Because here we have an unlimited time, so we can talk as much as we want now. And it was on Fulgurites, which are fossilized lightning that hit the ground and hit some form of silica and leave behind a fossil lightning behind. And they go through different geologic ages. So I thought that would be a really cool one as well. And then we will also go through many others. And one of the things I'm going to be talking about is I made this document a while ago, and it was for a guy named Michael who asked a question about Africa and how did the floodwaters go over the continent and how did we see it. And then I decided to add my presentation today at the bottom of this so I can share it with everybody and you can follow along if you like as well. So let me adjust that and redefine living. Since you don't know anything about the presentation I'm going to give, and anything I might say, might just be, you might not have anything to say if I cover it all first. So if you like the topic and you have any specific argument that you like and you like to use and that's your favorite, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm just here to chime in when I can.
Okay.
If at all.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm the same way. I just sit back and usually listen. And as I was listening to Ken talk about the polystrate trees, I liked it. They're always good, but like everything, there's always one particular type of counter argument that the critics always use. So what I like to do is hit them with about 10 different things, and that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to go through all of them at the same time and show you that there is no possible way that each individual layers are eons of time. And I just use the word eons of time because, as you know, each layer can be anywhere from 10 million years to 700 million years. Just depending on their thickness, when they believe it was laid down, was it in the ocean at one time, things like that. So I'm just going to use vague terms. And I did start with the polystrate trees because Kent brought something up interesting, but I also wanted to show a couple of different things regarding that. And what you guys can see here in the middle of your screen, I tried to enlarge it, didn't work so good. Yeah, I guess I can just remove ourselves. There we go. That seems to work. What you guys are looking at in the middle is the trees themselves are actually going through different geologic layers of time. And this is good because this shows that these trees were deposited somehow because they're missing their most important factor, which are their root systems. Most trees, with the exception of maybe palm trees and ferns, they have root systems that are larger than the tree itself. But in instances of these polystrate trees, we don't usually find root systems at all. And if they do, they're broken off. So that's a pretty good indicator that these things were moved around. Hold on, George is asking a question. Sorry. Okay. I'm also keeping an eye on chat. For some reason, it's spammed off the bottom. The blood to caffeine ratio. Okay. Oh, wait. There's a question. Hold on. I know those in opposition of the young Earth creation model claim that the geologic column is found in many locations around the Earth. Is that true or not? No, that is absolutely not true. There is one place on Earth where they can find it, but the fossils are not there. So the rock layers that they think should exist does exist in that one location, but in the next location next to it in Palestine, it's completely upside down, the entire geologic column. So they need index fossils to prove their geologic column to be true. Now you have to remember, a prediction made by evolutionists, Charles Lyell and Darwin, stated that there would be something called slow geologic time, and it became known as Darwinian gradualism. And this prediction is that we would find geologic layers, and in these geologic layers, animals that would be transitioning are transitional fossils slowly over time, over millions of years. So therefore, anything that would be contrary to this would be a falsification of that. So for example, stasis, that would be a falsification. Yet we find many examples of stasis. Another good example of that would be punctuated equilibrium, where things just arise out of nowhere and rapidly diverge and change into different things, very similar to itself. Those are two things that we do see. And these are falsifications of gradualism. And they had to invent these things because that's what we found in the geologic column. There shouldn't have been those things there, but that is what we saw. They always bring that up in debates and rattle off locations. Correct, yeah. They'll say, oh, but we found the geologic column over here, and we found it over there. What they're doing is they're playing the typical, word salad game, where if they found the geologic column absolutely complete in one region, what would that mean? What would that mean for us? Well, first of all, our predictions are that the geologic column exists, but that it's not eras of time. Of course, we're going to find aquatic sea life in the lower layers because the flood started in the ocean and it flooded over the land. So we should find aquatic life in the beginning. Now, if you guys have been following this for the last 3 years, like I have, they first said, look at this. Our ancestor is a sponge. That's where Kent got SpongeBob from, right? He was making fun of it. And that is true. We found a sponge in the very deepest layers. So therefore, it became the first LUCA, universal common ancestor. Then all of a sudden, they found a jellyfish. And then the jellyfish became the ancestor. Then they found a worm. And the worm makes the most sense of all because the worm actually burrows in the ground when they start getting flooded, which, of course, if the flood is so strong that it get buried with mud, they're going to be the deepest. And now the worm is our oldest ancestor. Hold on, George didn't get my link. 1 second. Sorry, guys. Chime in, redefine living if you want to.
The geological column, to me, it seems like a contradiction. And I've asked people like Ord before, who's a critic that joins a lot of these streams. So, on one hand, they're appealing to this uniformity. Nothing really changes. The present is the key to the past. But then when you look at the geological column, you have all of these different layers. Well, based on their own model, each one of those layers would have be the result of some drastic change. So when you go to some place and you see all of these different layers, well, something had to change in the environment to create the new layer, to stop that old layer and create the new layer according to their model, which to me is a contradiction to this idea that, everything is the same always. And those layers, those boundaries are really sharp. And so, whatever that change was, it had to happen quick. And when I've asked this question to them, it just seems like I'll either get a rhetoric answer like, go take a science class or something like that, or just a total dodge, like, or he's dodged me big time when I've asked him to explain that. Just seems like a contradiction. Don't know.
Yeah, the geologic column is one of the first things that evolutionists like to bring up in a debate, and I really like that they try that, because it actually destroys them later. Because remember, to them, evolution is nothing but genetics and biology, and they can't really use the fossil record, which is ironic that they like it so much. But stopping real quick in our tracks, hey George, good morning.
Hey George.
Good morning. Yeah, I was in bed when I saw your message. I'm not really sure. Are we live now, or is this just a recording?
That's it.
I am live to my members, so two people
okay.
probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm live, but there's just a few people here. We mostly will get Doki Doke, Iron Matt, and Timothy. You know, those are like the three guys that'll show up, and I think they're here now.
Yeah, good to see you guys. I can't respond in chat, but I see you. So I hope you guys are doing great today on the Sunday.
Yeah, George, I wanted you to join on this one because of no notification. Shocker, right? I wanted to bring you in on this because I'm going to be going over the layers are not ages on the geologic column. And I was letting everybody know that about 3 days ago when Kent was on, he was asked how these are not layers of time. And he used Polystrate Trees. And you brought up the Fulgurites, which is fossilized lightning.
Yes, yes. I actually wanted to do a separate stream on that, but I think it can be covered in about half an hour, actually, maybe even less. But it's quite interesting. Do you want me to go through it, Matt?
We're going to actually. I'm going to go over a whole bunch of different things that I think destroys the idea that these layers are ages. And now down near the bottom, I have that because I was hoping you would join, so I saved it for last.
Okay. Well, I'll wait. I'll wait for the end then.
Okay. We were going to start with these polystrate trees, and I guess this is good that a question was asked all around it, which is bioturbation. And that is one of the topics I actually get to down here. So we are going to cover that specifically. But some of the polystrate trees theoretically should have bioturbation near the base. But bioturbation is something that we don't really find in these rock layers. And most of them, especially these trees, these polystrate trees, were deposited from a flood, so we don't even find their root system. And wherever we would find their root system is where we would find that bioturbation. Now, there should be some places on Earth, I'm sure, where we would find it because floods still happen to this day, but they're happening on the surface. So I'm not saying that we won't ever find it, but so far we don't see that. And the reason why is because, as you can see from these images, is these trees occur in different layers, upside down, sideways, upright. And one of the main reasons for that is the flood of any type. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a global flood, but a flood is the reason that they happen. And John Mackay actually has an experiment that he did. I don't think I have it saved to show you guys, but I might. And it's a really good... Sorry, go ahead.
Bioturbation, you mean like soil, right?
That's organisms that... Yeah, that's this. I'll show you the pictures. Right here.
Like
this is organisms that go up and down inside the soil, and they leave behind traces. And this is what it looks like if they become fossilized. Nice. As you can see, this is inside of one rock layer. But here's an example of that same living organism going through multiple rock layers. So how could they have been alive for millions of years to leave their traces of bioturbation behind in theoretically many different millions of years of rock layer? And you can see the same thing here below. We can see it going from the granite down into the rock layer here, which we can see either that black is some type of carbon like they have in Australia, and we can get into another layer. But I mean, we can see it going through the geologic ages, and that's fossilized bioturbation. We can see a worm did this. George, if you wanted to say anything, feel free, and then I'll leave this on screen.
No, that's fine, Matt. I think, like you said, John Mackay on creationresearch.net has a lot of questions, like I think they call it the fact file. You can go in there and type in some keywords, and you'll get to read a lot of stuff that he's done some research on as well. So he's an in situ kind of guy. So he's been to a lot of places that I dream of going to, actually. But yeah, they actually. I actually spoke to them. What was it, on Saturday morning for me, but it was Friday for you guys, about coming on to SFT and doing a presentation on stalactites and stalagmites, and they agreed to do that. But I'll get in touch with Donnie about that particular stream and see what we can do. That's some amazing stuff about statistics and how they grow, and how we can actually empirically verify the growth of these stalactites. And it certainly doesn't take millions or even thousands of years to actually create or form.
Yeah.
I was sorry, Matt, when you were speaking, I was actually trying to go through and find my document that I wrote on Fulgurites. So that's why I didn't quite hear everything that you said on the bioturbation.
Oh, it's okay. We can go over it again in a little bit. I can even start now, because some of the things I'm going to be talking on are, we're going to go through polystrate trees, animal tracks that go through geologic layers of time, dinosaur tracks that they found pushed down supposed millions of years of different rock layers. Of course, bioturbation. We're going to talk about DropStones, which is the cover image of the photo that I showed for the video. Modern day animal tracks found in some of the deepest layers. Bird tracks found before dinosaurs even existed, whales on mountains, and then, of course, Fulgurites. I thought those would be some of the best things to talk about, because they all work in conjunction with one another to show that these layers are not eons of time. They are literally formed in the flood. And I was thinking about also considering talking about the law of horizontality, which talks about the layers on how they're supposed to have formed over time, and how we find the opposite. So we're going to go over all of that. But looking at this is a secular comment, by the way, which I find ironic. I highlighted it in blue here for everybody. It says that life is impossible without a soil layer. And we know from the fossil record that abundant populations of animals, plants, and burrowing animals existed throughout much of Earth's history, right? That's the assumption, but they said that's what they found. However, there is an abundance of recognizable soil layers and bioturbation, an absent of them anywhere in the geologic column. So we find animals in rock layers where there's no bioturbation, which would mean that those layers were never eons of time, because the animals themselves would have had nothing to eat to live on. For carnivores to exist, there needs to be herbivores. Herbivores are always about 90% of the world population, because obviously you can't have more carnivores than herbivores. They had to eat themselves into extinction. So the fact that they can look at the geologic column and say, we don't see any of this bioturbation, and yet still assume that these were actual epochs of time because they found animals there, it's very contradictory to what they need to do, right? You can't have tons of animals and no food for them to eat. So bioturbation is a huge one, and secular scientists admit that they don't find this in the geologic column. So everybody remember that. You can take a screenshot of this, and I'll share this document with everybody so you guys can also do that. Let me make sure I'm getting up on all the comments. Yeah, George and the creation research guy setting up in the USA has a PhD in sedimentology, I believe. That'd be great. Yeah, we're going to get a lot of people that are interested in this stuff nowadays. And so here's a picture of what bioturbation looks like. It's a cartoon, of course, and it's just showing different organisms that do burrow into the ground. It shows aquatic life on the right. This is supposed to be the ocean. And then land life going from the sea, like crabs here. And then inland, where you get worms and different insects that burrow into the ground, and clams, right? So, and this is the fossilized bioturbation, what it would look like in a single rock layer. And then this one, I think you would like, George. It shows bioturbation of the single burrowing creatures on the top layer here, going all the way through different geologic ages of time. So, always good. Oh, I'm sorry, George. You were out of the stream.
Sorry, mate. No, I went to search for a document and I pressed the wrong button and I left the chat and then I had to come back again. Yeah,
That's okay.
I do know something about those. Yeah, you're right. Uh, they burrow through various layers, don't they?
Yes, they do. They go through
Yeah.
different layers, and that's what destroys them, being an example of proof for evolution, because they're going through layers that are beneath it that are supposedly millions of years older.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. That that doesn't work. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That is a disaster for them. Same thing with these trees, right? They go, well, we believe in polystrate trees. We just believe that these trees were deposited from a local flood, not a global flood. So that's the rescue device. And could it be true? Sure. So we need to go, let's go for more evidence and more evidence and more evidence, right? That's what we want to attack them. Now, Kent brought up Specimen Ridge. Now, as you can see, these trees at the top of Specimen Ridge dated younger than the trees, I'm sorry, older than the trees below it. The exact opposite of what they would expect to see. But it's completely fine if we're talking about all of these trees being deposited at the same time. Now, here's the thing that Kent forgot to mention. There are 27 different layers, and they're all the exact same form of tree. They're all the same species of tree deposited in all these different layers, and they're going through the different layers. But here's the thing. No animal fossils have been discovered in these layers. That's it. No animals of any kind. Just, I don't know why, because this was a flood. This isn't epochs of time. But according to Yellowstone National Park, these are millions of years of evolutionary time. So they're perplexed at why there's no mammals, birds, insects, or worms in any of these layers. So let that sink in. This is one thing that they quoted. In many growing trees, the root systems are larger than the tree itself. In the Specimen Ridge trees, however, the roots abruptly terminate at the ground level, or in some cases with the root ball, individual roots have been broken. The older trees are sequoia, and the same species as those that grow there today to be in the thousands of years old and are virtually immune to disease and pest and resistant to fire. They have no bark or branches. So there's only one way that these trees could be here, and that is from a massive, massive flood that formed all 27 of these layers at one time.
And Matt, we know from the Mount St. Helens eruption, where literally millions of logs floated on Spirit Lake, the fact that they were floating and rubbing up against each other removed that bark. So that's why you see them without a bark in the standing position, because a lot of that bark was removed while they were floating around, rubbing against each other. And they've also done sonar imaging of the bottom of the lake and actually found a lot of these trees that were actually in the standing position. So we have empirical evidence to show that these things can happen very quickly and not, the rescue device that I keep hearing is, they grew in that position and then, you had local floods bring in different deposits and that's how they were formed. But I think Ian Juby I can't remember the actual episode, but he was talking about Nova Scotia and they found polystrate reeds, not trees, but reeds. Now, reeds, if you know, they're hollow, right? And there's no way they can even survive 1 year in the standing position. But a lot of them were actually upside down, like you mentioned, because in reeds, they grow in like segments. And you can see by the joints at the segments that they were actually upside down and not standing up. So that's another piece of evidence that these things were buried quickly. Because if they weren't, they wouldn't be upside down and they would have rotted ages ago, because reeds, as you know, are very soft.
Yeah, you can go to Google and do a quick search what happens when you bury the bottom of a tree, the trunk of a tree. And say it actually will kill it faster than if you were to expose the roots. So you can't just bury a few feet of the bottom of a tree. If they say, well, maybe that tree was slowly buried over multiple floods over a long period of time. Well, after one flood, just burying a foot or two of the base of that tree, that's going to kill it. So that
Yeah,
doesn't
because
work.
they rot.
Well,
Yeah, they rot.
That's the other thing, like trees don't grow in rock. Well, not many trees grow in rock, but they need soil. So where's the soil in all these layers? And obviously, I don't know if you know too much about trees, but they have effectively two sets of root systems. They have like an outer root system, which is very fine, and they tend to grow to the extent of the spread of the tree. So what happens when it rains? The rain droplets fall on the edge of the tree, and these edge roots pick up the water to sustain the tree. There's another set of roots, which are the deep set of roots, which grow downwards to actually support the tree. Now, in every case that we've seen in these polystrate trees, we don't see that, which means they weren't buried in situ. They would have to been ripped out of the ground, carried along. They rubbed against each other, therefore the bark was removed. Then they uprighted themselves because of being inundated with water, etc., and they floated down. John Mackay has got a fairly simple experiment where he puts matches in a tub of water, and you can literally see the match sink down to the base in a vertical direction. They're vertical as they come down and hit the ground in that tub of water. I don't know how much empirical evidence do they want to see.
Yeah, I have that. I actually showed that on one of my streams. I just looked to see if I still have it on there, but I don't, because each presentation I do, I usually have to delete my old ones to upload more images. That's why I think I'm going to have to do documents like this, because it's a lot easier to share than upload new images every time. But that's a great experiment, because that visually shows them exactly what they want to see, and they form it exactly the same way.
And of course, I think Dr. Steve Austin, actually, his PhD thesis was based around the bark, or the peat, the bark that stripped off the trees and floated down to the base of a lake to form peat. And he was proven correct through the events at Mount St. Helens.
Right. Here, yeah, Mount St. Helens is a great example, because it's a miniature version of what happened, a very miniature version, but still, it shows the geologic ages form in rocks right below it. And here's a good question. They said, they say, meaning evolutionists or evos, there are petrified trees that go through different layers, but not through actual ages, like the Cambrian or whatever is above it. So how do we answer that? Easy. This is answered through catastrophic plate tectonics, not through hydroplate theory. And the main reason why is because in hydroplate theory, he has the continent of the entire North America dropping 1 mile down, forcing all the water up. And as you guys have seen, a massive tidal wave covering the entire continent. And that happens rapidly all at once. Catastrophic plate tectonics answers the geologic layers that we see much better. And that's why I think when you look at the layers and you see the larger rocks and then medium rocks and then small rocks, and then there's another layer and you see big rocks again, small, that's from tidal waves coming in and out and in and out. And they're forming different layers. But as that happens, you would imagine that a wave that's coming in, it's ripping out all of the trees and it's depositing it in those layers. And then they go out, and then the next wave to come in is either larger, like going at the next height, and it's also depositing and destroying that ecosystem. So it's destroying ecosystems as it goes, and it's taking those trees with it. And that's why they're not depositing trees like in that ecosystem into a deeper, lower ecosystem, because that already happened. That's how I would explain it.
That's correct, Matt. Most don't consider the fact that the flood was actually in a tidal sort of situation, a low tide, high tide, because of the effects of the moon. You would have had a water level high during the high tide and a low during the low tide, and therefore water would have receded and then come back with new sediment to form new layers.
Or yeah, Yeah, I think also one of the biggest problem is we have visuals from these flood videos, and I'm guilty of it too. Okay, don't get mad. Where we have these flood scenarios made on a computer, even catastrophic plate tectonics, and they show the fountains of the great deep breaking open, and you can't even see the top of the wave, and then this massive tidal wave rushing in and killing all the dinosaurs, right? Well, that's for visual fun, but that's not what happened. But it looks great, and I'll give them that. It does look awesome, but that scenario is not really what's going on. Sorry, it's what it looks really cool on camera, but the tidal waves going over the land at different rates because of the tsunamis that are occurring from these subducted slabs, that makes a whole lot more sense, and that explains these different geologic layers in something that a single tidal wave going over every continent, and now all of a sudden it's 20 cubits worldwide underwater in a week. That's not the scenario that played out. It says that it took how many months? Like 150 days to flood the entire Earth, and then another 150 at the end of the flood to subdue and go back down. So we're talking a process that took quite a while. So it explains why we see so many tracks in the low layers, and then we find the dinosaurs we find all of the animals that left those marks in the other layers, which we can get into now. But actually, before I do that, I guess I could jump around. Who cares? Yeah, right here. Here, this is an image of all of the different tracks that we find with the bodies always above them. The purple represents tracks. So when we look at amphibians, we find all of their tracks in the deepest and oldest rock layers. And then later, we find the amphibians themselves. Reptile, same exact thing. We find their tracks all throughout here in the earliest rock layers, but we find their bodies much higher. Why is that? Well, because they know the danger of the water. They're leaving it. They're outrunning it. They're moving along. Dinosaurs, exactly the same thing. Reptiles, other reptilia. So I don't know what this, I guess they ran out of room. I took this image from an old video on Answers in Genesis. That's right. And then here we can see this one, dinosaur fossilized footprints going through geologic time. They ran up and they found the dinosaur at the top. Another good one are the trilobites. Here they are. Apparently trilobites lived for millions of years. I had no idea. Here are the different rock layers they're going through, and then they die at the top because they're being buried. They're trying to get up to breathe and to survive, but they couldn't do it. They didn't survive it because these are not rock layers. These are not millions of years. If so, trilobites don't live that long. Nothing does. And
yeah, just wait till they find that soft tissue in those.
Oh, I know.
Mark said he's looking. He said stay tuned, and so we'll see how they explain that one away.
Yeah, that'll be really bad.
The other explanation I haven't heard is what did the trilobites evolve from? I've heard them use the eyes as proof for evolution because they've shown different trilobites with different numbers of segments in the eye. I mean, that's just a variation, right? It's not necessarily a different creature to a trilobite. It's just a trilobite with different eyes. But how do they explain where did the trilobite come from? Is it another one of these hitching a ride on an asteroid from outer space that come to Earth?
Yeah. Yeah, and they say those eyes are some of the most complex eyes.
Correct. Yeah. So where's the evolution of the eye, or even the evolution of the trilobite itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. They said that the trilobite eye is extremely advanced and it can see in every direction, and they had hundreds of eyes. So it wasn't just one eye that had to evolve. They had to evolve hundreds of eyes that can see in every direction. Now, I think their demise came from the mere fact that if you look at where they exist on a map, they're literally right along the edge of where the fountains of the great deep would have broken forth. So they would have gotten wrecked, especially since they were bottom feeders, right? They're walking along the bottom, and then all of a sudden the mid-Atlantic ridge rips open. They're pretty much toast. There was no way they could survive.
Yeah, is it Stephen Meyer that wrote the book? Actually wrote a paper about the Precambrian explosion and called it the information explosion, because all of those features are represented by information in the genome, and they're complex, extremely complex little critters, even though they're small in size. Things like the eyes, and that they have these limbs that function in the shell. That's a lot of information that showed up very rapidly from, whatever that first life was according to their model. Where'd that all come from? And he calls that the information explosion instead of the Precambrian explosion. It's very interesting. In fact, I'll try to find that and put it in the side chats. You can put it in the in your chat.
Okay.
Real quick.
Awesome. Do it.
Matt, the other day when we were having the stream with Ken Hovand, I wanted to bring a few other points into it, but I had to cut it short because we had those people joining in to ask questions. Can I share something with you just to show you one of the points I was going to make, which I didn't get a chance to make?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Screen share away, man. Yeah.
I'll click the share screen button, and all right. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna actually magnify it a bit, so
can
you
you go
actually
full screen on that, George?
hold on a second. I'll just go 150. Can you see it better now, Sam?
Yeah, I think that's a bit better. Yeah.
I'll bump it up to 200%.
Yeah, there you go. That's
okay.
A lot better.
Yeah, we all know about this. This is the Grand Canyon, by the way, and you'll also note this line that goes just below the Tepete sandstone is called the Great Unconformity. See how those layers are angled?
Yep.
Right? And then directly above it is the Tepete sandstone. Now let's go back to the Tepete sandstone, and you'll see these 90-degree bends. Okay, now apart from the experiments that have been done on the bends, which prove that there was no metamorphic processes in place, so the secular explanation of those bends occurred when the rock was ductile at so many degrees of, I think it's about 400 degrees centigrade and about 3-4 kilometers deep underground. Now, those bends don't show any evidence of the structure, the actual sand structure, being metamorphized at all. But the interesting part is, because the Tepete sandstone is directly above the Great Unconformity, and if these bends occurred in the Tepete sandstone at 3 to 4 kilometers deep underground, why aren't there any bends in the Great Unconformity? Surely you'd expect some kind of bending in those layers as well.
Cool point. Yeah, that's a good picture, actually, too. One of the better ones I've seen.
Yeah, I got that from. Did I stop sharing?
Yes, it's okay. I'll bring it back.
Okay.
No, you are still sharing.
Oh, did I? Okay. I thought I. Oh, here you go. It's
there
gone.
You go. Gone.
So there's a lot of little things like that, and I was interested in a debate that David McQueen had with. I call him Snake Was Wrong. Okay, he brought the Coconino sandstone as being a sand dune or an Aeolian deposit. Now we know because we found recumbent folds in the Coconino sandstone. Now, recumbent folds can't happen in a wind deposition case. They need to be wet, moist, with lateral movement. They cannot. There's no way they can form in a wind deposited situation. But what interested me is we have debunked that point so many times, and yet they use it over and over and over. The same talking points, exactly the same talking points, even though we show them evidence that it could never be a wind deposited situation.
I don't know why. You know what? They don't follow us. They don't watch. they just join to have a debate against us, and they forget that somebody else already brought it up already, and they just keep repeating the same things because they think it's going to be, a new argument. They're going to think it's great. Oh, redefine. You do put that link up. Huh? I'll share it.
Yeah,
with everybody.
it's a pretty long, it's a long paper, but it's a really good read.
Okay, I posted it for everybody to see.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, we've touched a lot on. That's why I started making these Noah's Global Flood short videos, trying to keep them under 5-10 minutes. And some people like long videos, but some people just don't. They don't have the time for it, or they're not interested, or they want to show it to somebody and they're like, 45 minutes, I don't have time for that. So I started breaking them up. I didn't break up old videos and make them into other videos. I totally remade them, and I have a new playlist I made just yesterday on Noah's Flood, and I'm starting to go through it. And we can do the same with this video. I'll publish this for everybody else, but I want my members to get something special. So their questions get answered here, and don't have time to be streaming all day long. I wish I was like Praise. I tell you, man, just stream 19 hours a day. That would be cool. But no, I haven't. I've been to La Brea, but not the tar pits. I'm not there specifically, even though I was really close. I should have gone, but I was working at the time. Didn't go. And do I have a video on it? No, not my channel. I mean, maybe something 2 years ago, maybe, but I doubt it. I remember every video I've made. I don't have anything really on the tar pits. I might have brought up the subject vaguely, but nothing specific. Yeah, nothing comes to my mind.
Yeah, I sent you an email this morning, Matt. I was watching an episode on Let's Talk Creation, where they were talking about how did all the animals fit on the ark. I mean, we've heard it all before, but one interesting point that they brought up was they said that they've done some research into how did they care for so many animals? How did 8 people care for so many animals? And they mentioned studies that have been done. And I sent them an email asking if they can send us some information on those studies, because I think we've got a few theories on how, but I'm interested to see what that study actually showed.
Yeah, I think I got that on the on your group message earlier today. I was like, ooh, that'll be nice to watch that reply. I even watched some of that video actually with Todd Wood.
Yes.
And they believe in speciation as well, but they believe in not a hyperspeciation necessarily, but I think it is. Their version of speciation is rolls over into human beings and even whales that walked on land. So they have a very large gap of speciation. So very interesting viewpoints.
Yeah, it's always we always say it's important to have a critical thinking skills in these situations, and even though we may disagree with some points, they can make some valid arguments in some areas, and that's why we should always listen to them, even though we don't agree with them totally.
Oh yeah, of course. But they get very upset with questions. So hopefully you worded it good, because remember that last one, Sam? On me asking Peter, that didn't go over very well. He took that as an attack, a straight out attack. I'm like, I asked like 15 or 20 questions in a 30-minute video. I don't know how that's an attack, but okay. Yeah, it didn't go over very well. Hopefully this one will, George.
Yeah, well, I don't think I worded it too strongly. I just said I'd be interested in seeing what the study results were, and if they could help out, that'd be great.
I agree. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Have you seen these images? I've shared these before with the team, I think. The first one that you're looking at right here is from coal, a dinosaur track that you can see directly into the coal when it was soft. And supposedly over deep time, right? Here's another one. I think this one was a Tyrannosaurus stepped through millions of years of geologic time. And here was a Brontosaurus track that did the same thing, a more rounded footprint, but you can see it pressing down through solid stone. Obviously, stone won't bend like that unless it was soft and pliable to begin with. It would crack, it would get destroyed, It wouldn't be found at all. So when this wall right here fell out and they looked above it and they found the dinosaur track, they're like, whoa, look at this. Luckily, I was able to save these pictures because these are hard to find. And these are anomalies, of course, because they're not looking for these types of things. So I always find that kind of ironic, right? They go, well, there's no proof that, these endogenous retroviruses, of course, they turned beneficial. And you go, where's the evidence that happened? They go, well, it had to have happened. It had over millions of years. It's like, well, what? You got to give us the evidence. You don't just assume that it happened. They go, well, anomalies can happen, right? Just like these. Well, these are anomalies, and sure, anything can happen. If you look in the geologic column, you'll randomly find something, right? They did that recently with Mars. They said, look, they found a door on Mars where aliens live. What they didn't tell you is that door is about like that big.
Yeah.
So, like, unless mice made the door, our little tiny Martian men, is ridiculous. But that's what they say. Anomalies can be anywhere. So therefore, we should discount this evidence. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
Pretty convenient.
Yeah.
Well,
totally.
we hear a lot about the actual discoveries on Mars and how quickly they jump onto the evidence for intelligent life on other planets. When they actually really look into it, then that story changes completely, and it's just a secular thing. That's what they do.
Yeah, it is. My favorite is that they go, the child in the womb isn't even alive. It's nothing. It's just a clump of bacteria, is garbage. And yet they're the first to claim that, like, hey, we found life on Mars. We found a single bacteria. Yeah. Wait a minute. You call that single bacteria life, but yet that clump of bacteria with millions of cells, that's not life.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Oh, man. They just make it up as they go along. I thought of an experiment to involve the viewers. A bunch of people send in photos of their barefoot print in mud and put the photos besides the famous ones, beside the dinosaur. Ask the Evo if he can. Identify the famous one against all the others. Yeah, I found something interesting very recently. I haven't shared it with anybody yet because I was planning on gathering up the information. I don't want to get sidetracked, but I'm going to show you a tribe of people that they found that have been walking barefoot their whole life, and another tribe of people in the Amazon rainforest who climb up trees with their arches. And what it did is it displaced their toes, and they have really wide gaps between them. And it looks like some of these tracks with people that walk barefoot on some of these things. Because when you go barefoot, your toes widen, they spread out. And when your feet go in shoes, they narrow, they get really, really thin. Since we spend most of our life always in tennis shoes, our foot adapted to that, and it completely changed. Because not very many people go shoeless anymore. Or they even tribes, they wear some form of sandals or something like that. But it's unique.
Yeah.
This tribe is completely barefoot, and look at their feet. You're going to be shocked when I show you that. It's really bizarre looking. So I'm going to make a video on that one day too. But before I get off too far, go ahead.
Are they hippies?
No, they're total tribesmen. Yeah, I know what you mean, because hippies, they do it later in life. So their foot's already shaped. Their foot. I know the hippies well enough. But what you guys are looking at here are DropStones. These are rocks that got dropped off and landed while these layers were forming, and the layers warped around them. And these DropStones got there from other locations while these were being formed, and we can find them around the world. And what they said did this was the Ice Age. Now, how they got there was that there were sheets of ice like a glacier, and they were moving along and they were picking up rocks and then they were melting. And as they got over North America, South America, pick your poison, they melted and dropped that boulder, or it fell off and it landed on some of the rocks. And they believe that over eons of time, of course, the layers built around it. But as you can see, those aren't layers going around it because of the law of horizontality. Yeah. They would not go around it like that. They were dropped when the layers were soft and still forming. It's the only way that they would exist on how we're seeing it right now. And these are called DropStones, and they exist everywhere. And but there's the thing about the Ice Age. Remember, the Ice Age existed, according to them, in only the northern regions of the world. The Ice Age never came down to where Noah's Ark would have landed. It would have never went down to the Middle East. But yet, Job, who lived in the city of Ur, which was to the north of the Mediterranean Sea, talks about sheets of ice being on the ocean. When would that have ever occurred at any point in the last 5,000 years? Never. Never. So what did he see? If he's talking about an ice age, some guy said it was talking about well water. That was the dumbest answer I think I've ever heard. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent. We see that this ice age went very, very far down, much further than they talk about in the evolutionary model, and while these layers were forming. So DropStones, to me, are a very good piece of evidence for layers forming quickly and worldwide. And these DropStones are very good indicators, because these are very small that you're looking. See the penny up there? Some are a little bit larger, like this one, but it doesn't matter their size. These are just really good pieces of evidence that there was a flood, and these layers were really quick. I could show other ones where we see gigantic waterfalls that had to form from being under 100 miles of water. That's insane. But then again, it doesn't have to do with geologic layers, so I didn't add it to this. But if anyone wanted to talk on that before I change topics again.
It's quite evident, what I find is a lot of times when we bring up evidence like that, they do one of three things. They deny it, they reject it, or they dismiss it, hand waving it away effectively. They don't want to go there because it destroys their narrative, so they'd rather not talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, from their worldview, it has to be true. It's the problem is the interpretation of the evidence, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they're forced to, interpret that evidence in a certain way so they can pretend there is no God.
But Sam, I showed some of those rotary flumes and the other flume experiments that John Mackay has done, which shows clearly that layering can occur very quickly.
Yeah.
Yet they still are trapped in this scenario where, no, it took millions of years. Even though we can show them empirical evidence, they won't accept it. And they're the ones that are telling us that we're not scientific. We're giving them science and they're rejecting it.
Right.
Now, who's doing the real science?
Right.
That's what I don't understand. The predictions are what destroy them. Ironically enough, they made the predictions, they didn't come true, and ours are. If that's not scientific enough, I don't know what is. So to me, I'm going to always be slapping them in the face with the predictions that they failed on and how ours are superior. And the geologic layers are a good one, because literally in the catastrophic plate tectonics, they said, if we're looking for a geologic layer of when the continents were rapidly spreading, we should find it in this region. And then we look there and we find those fission tracks all throughout the rocks, right? Where these plutonium halos are like leaving stretch marks, bands where they've been moving over rock. I mean, these are great pieces of evidence that show that massive rapid plate movement is happening there. And we're not even talking about cold slab subduction. We're talking about like where we see these rapid movements occurring from. And I think they're just denying it at this point. They're like as anti-science as you can get. It's unbelievable. But as moving on, here's at Death Valley National Park in the Pliocene sediments, which were dated to 5 million to 2.5 million years ago. These are horse tracks that they found. And this, remember, horses supposedly didn't even evolve until, modern day horses, where they're large, very, very recently, and only in Europe. So that should not be the case. We're talking like, remember, the horses were supposed to be very, very miniature, very tiny, and then got large only very recently. I forget the dates on the horse thing, but here's another one in Permian rock. In the 1992 Smithsonian Magazine itself, they found 300 million year old Permian rock bear tracks directly in the book, and they wrote that these are anomalies. Clearly it's a bear track. I mean, that's exactly what a bear track looked like. And they wrote that it's something strange. They said it's a three-toed ungulate, very strange, very, very obscure. We don't know what it is. So I wrote that there for everybody to read directly for themselves in the article, and on how they denied it. And then we have bird tracks that go back 200 million years. This is before Archaeopteryx came along, which is supposedly, the ancestor to all birds. These are the ones that they said that the Native Americans must have carved, because that makes sense. That's pretty much the dumbest rescue device I've probably ever heard in my life. Parrots in the late Cretaceous period. I just put a whole bunch of scientific, peer-reviewed articles talking about modern day birds inside rock layers where they obviously shouldn't be at all. And here's one that they admit right here in the National Geographic. They go, this bird lung closely resembles found in living birds. And you can see it right here. It's completely a bird. No difference at all. And it had almost like modern day lungs inside of it. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen either, because they had to evolve the ability to get lungs like this. Another good one of my favorite ones is the Doheny Scientific Expedition. This is the book on the right called, you can see it right here. I have a link where you guys can read it. And they even put the dinosaur on the cover of it that they found. And the best response ever comes in what I highlighted right here in the yellow. It says, it is not a dinosaur. It is impossible, because we know that dinosaurs were extinct 12 million years before man appeared on Earth.
Yeah, that's funny. That was what Nephilim Free used in his last debate. And the guy said, it does resemble it, right? But the point is, how could these people even draw animals that they would have never seen?
Right.
It just went downhill from there.
Exactly. I mean, it makes no sense. And then they go, well, they use their imagination. Okay, well, they use their imagination and literally thought up animals that existed. What? That's a pretty good imagination, actually. That's like
evolution.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Matt, while you're on transitional fossils and footprints and stuff, I remember, I think it was Snake was wrong, used the horse evolution as evidence for transitional fossils. And I remember reading something from the Evo of all Evos, Dr. Niles Eldridge, right? He's the curator at the American Museum of Natural History. Now, I'm quoting here, right? I'm going to quote directly from what he said. He says, quote, I admit that an awful lot of that has gotten into the textbooks as though it were true. For instance, the most famous example still on exhibition, in brackets, in the American Museum, is the exhibit on horse evolution. That has been presented as literal truth in textbooks after textbooks. Now I think that is lamentable. But by the time it filters down to the textbooks, we've got a problem. So you see, they say it over and over and over again, and it becomes truth. It goes back to the Nazis, make a lie big enough and repeat it often enough, and people will believe it.
Right.
And it's still in the textbooks, just like the embryology example, etc.
Man, that's a pretty good quote. I mean, they don't like to admit that stuff usually, because that's their business, that's their job. And they very few people will be willing to be brave enough to say, I can't believe they're still teaching lies. And that's good.
Well,
I'm glad some of them do it.
Well, Dr. Colin Patterson as well. He was the, I think, the natural history curator of the British Museum, and he also is quoted as saying, "I fully agree with your comments on the lack of direct illustration of evolutionary transitions in my book. If I knew of any, fossil or living, I would certainly have included them. You suggest that an artist should be used to visualize such transformations, but where would he get the information from? I could not honestly provide it, and if I were to leave it to the artistic license, would that not mislead the reader?" There's an admission from another another curator of another natural history museum.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, they say that when they reconstruct these bones of humanoid skulls, that it's just artist interpretation. They don't know any of the soft material. It's all subjective. But once they puzzle it together, they know that. You know, they come at them and they say, "Hey, can you puzzle this together and make them look more primitive?" You know, another subjective word. And then they're like, "Sure." So they just use their own artistic license and go crazy.
Well, Nebraska man was a perfect example. A pig's tooth to, prehistoric man with a family and kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. They put their foot in their mouth a lot with those missing links. Remember, I did a video on that a while ago where I showed every single missing link on their chart of the March of Progress was a complete lie. They didn't have evidence for any of them. That was a fun video, by the way. I actually have that on the Aaron Raw debunking playlist now because he goes to those still to this day. And evolutionists are quick to say, that's an old chart. And that's outdated. Oh, it's so wrong and outdated, yet used every day in every classroom. Get rid of it then if it's old and outdated. You're the first to say it's not true, but you're the first to admit that they're still using it. So which is it? You're totally fine with kids being lied to, or you really want them to change? Yeah, right.
I mean, every time they say that, they're stepping on their own feet. They're admitting that their foundation has been falsified or overturned.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
They're up here working on the third or the fourth story of the building, and they're saying, "Well, the first story, that's gone now. We don't need that anymore." Well, what's holding up the second and the third?
Right. Yeah. And they go, "It's okay. No one believes in Darwinian evolution anymore. We've moved way past him." Oh, really? Is that why it's still called Darwinian evolution?
So it's been falsified?
Yeah. I mean, his is completely wrong. All of it. Even in like every video I think that I post, I still mention all of his falsifications, the predictions that he made, which were like completely wrong.
Yeah.
But hey, Doki, I can't click on that link when I'm behind stage like this. I'll have to do it after. I can't see it.
I opened it up. So if you want, I can try. Yeah, let me see if I can.
Yeah, put it in private chat. There you go. Another good piece of evidence for people are whales on mountains. So whales live in the ocean, and when they die, they float. They're mostly fat. They get consumed by sharks and birds, and then after a few days, their carcass sinks right to the bottom of the ocean. So finding them on mountaintops really shouldn't be something that we're finding a lot of, but we do find them, and we find them all over the place. I have a couple links of different ones where they've been found even over 5,000 feet, and they would have to now say that there was rapid uplift. And so if we have rapid uplift, and that's what we say happened during the flood, then they're agreeing with us. So either way, they're in big trouble because they have, remember, whales evolved very recently in terms of evolution. Modern day blue whales were like, 50 million years ago. So we have modern day whales that are on the tops of mountains or near it. And the uplift of slow geologic time is like, 300 millimeters or, per year. like what 1 foot a year or something like that. It's not very high. I'm sorry, like 1 million years. I forget what it is. It's so slow, it's ridiculous. So we get slow uplift if we're going to go with the geologic time. Then we can't have modern day animals very high in the geologic column or on mountains. But in our model, we can, because that's what happened. The ocean was part of the land for a little while during a flood, and then all of a sudden the mountains formed at the end. It would have pushed a lot of this aquatic life right into the mountains. That's what we see. And they would have to say that, well, it did happen fast, but it was because of an earthquake or rapid plate tectonics. Well, they just admitted that it can happen quickly. And to defeat us, you have to prove that it can never happen quickly at all. Because if it can happen quickly, even in the secular worldview, they've just refuted themselves by admitting that. So quails on mountains, great evidence for us.
Yeah, Matt, I was in a discussion with one of these YouTube warriors about the Hawaiian Islands and told him that we had done a 2-hour stream on the Hawaiian Islands. And he says, well, how do you explain all those strings of islands forming in 6,000 years? And I said, I just gave him the example of Surtsey, the island of Surtsey. Literally overnight, in geological terms, it formed a volcanic island, half of which was eroded within 50 years, within decades, I think it was. I'm not sure whether it was 50 years, but 50% of it eroded within decades. So when you present empirical evidence of these things that actually have occurred, and you provide analogies to, say, the Hawaiian Islands, why can't they accept that? Because it goes against their deep time narrative, of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they can't handle that at all. Which is funny because the Hawaiian Islands are literally volcanoes. They literally formed in the flood. We can see that.
Exactly. And the other point is they estimate, I think the Hawaiian Islands grew over 80 million years or something. And then when you present satellite information on tectonic plate movements and equate that to the cold subduction plates, it would mean these cold subduction plates would have been in the Earth for about 80 million years. And then you say to them, well, why are these cold subduction plates so cold? There's no graduation of heat, even though they've penetrated 700 to 800 kilometers deep into the mantle, where it's probably around about 1,000 degrees centigrade. But those cold subduction plates don't show any gradation of temperature change. They're cold from the surface right down to the base.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about that cold plate subduction, is because it doesn't have a lot of time to sit there before it's going to heat up. I mean, you can't have millions of years and them still be cold. I mean, you would think the simple logic would really be able to, get in their head a little bit. But
you'd see some gradation. On the edges it would be hotter, and as you go towards the middle of the subduction plate, it should be colder. So
right.
But that's not what we see. We see just a cold subduction plate from the surface down to, I think it's 750 kilometers depth.
Yeah. They're always trying to say that, oh man, that would cause so much heat friction and all of these things. It's like, okay, well, if that was true, then we would see that at those edges. They would have, that's exactly what we would find. We'd find evidence for that. And,
exactly.
But that's the problem also that they have, is they don't consider that there's a possibility of the upper slabs were colder. They were a different form. There was a different mantle that got subducted initially. They don't consider the fact that there is, what do you call that? When the viscosity, there's different types of viscosity. And that can have a huge, profound effect, especially since when rocks melt or get hot, they can expand in size, which would change the viscosity. It would change the rate of subduction. But we're not dealing with super geniuses here. So usually you got to bring something down to their level. And, you know, they'll believe something based on faith, right? Like all of these geological things. And then you bring up something like viscosity, they'll be like, I've never heard of it, but you're wrong. It's like, wait a minute. So you just admitted you don't know anything about it. We're wrong and you're right. And so therefore you admitting that you believe it based on faith. They do that a lot. They constantly admit that what they believe is on faith. They just don't say that because they hate the word faith so much.
Yeah. Because
I like to point it out to them.
Yeah.
All the time.
That's good. That's good. That's why you get kicked out of a lot of those groups.
Right.
I'm sure you guys have heard of this one before, but I thought it would be a good one. It got brought up every so often, a little bit here and there, but there's an 80-foot whale that was found discovered in diatomaceous earth. They're called diatoms, and diatoms are fossilized shells, and they're chalky looking and very, very white. And the rate that they form is very slow, 0.09 millimeters per year. So how in the world could something that formed that slowly bury a fossil of a whale, a gigantic whale, like it is, rapidly? How could it possibly do it? Because, you know, we would know that the bones would get evaporated, especially in the bottom of the ocean. The ocean is full of enzymes. That's why not a lot of things can exist when you throw them into the ocean for very long. It just decay. It would get eaten away by the enzymatic activity of the ocean. But yet here we have an entire whale completely preserved from head to tail in diatoms. And I thought you guys would like this one. I also supplied the link at the very bottom for everyone if you wanted to see it. And then we have fossilized lightning, George.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Matt, I have to thank you for this. You probably don't know why, but when I did my research on radioactivity, I remember seeing a video, one of your videos, about how lightning can create super heavy elements. So I started reading. So if I can share my screen now,
yep.
I'll show you what I mean. And here, can you see that? Where are all the Fulgurites?
Yep.
Okay. Now there's a Nature paper. Through my research, I found this Nature paper that pretty much talked about how many lightning strikes hit the Earth, etc. And so I followed it through and found out that this lightning actually, when it hits soil, rock, or sand, will create these things called fulgurites. They're tubes of a glassy rock. That, as it says there, it's a shape of a convoluted tube. Sometimes they're straight, sometimes they're different shapes. But and they are very fragile, by the way. I'll admit that they do erode very, very quickly. But when you look at the deep time scenario and the number of times lightning actually strikes the Earth, you'll see what I mean as I go through this. So these are some of the forms that can be produced, as Matt showed earlier on his screen. This is on a beach, right? There's one that's going through multiple layers of rock. We're talking about lightning here, right? The heat I think in lightning is probably hotter than the sun in some instances I read. There's one for a bit of scale through rock.
Let me point out something that's obvious. Even if they do, you're saying that they can erode away fairly quickly.
Well, the Earth itself erodes, and as it's eroding these ones away as well. But some of them you can see from that one on the beach,
right?
That they do actually survive, and we do find quite a bit of them, and you'll see later on. Many of them are actually used.
That picture of them going through the layers really quick.
Yeah. Hold on a second, Sam. I'm just going to show you. Some of them actually used as jewelry. I haven't got it here, but yeah, they're used as jewelry. Do you want that picture there?
Yeah, well, yeah. The only point I was going to make is that even if they did erode away, they would still leave behind those veins or those caverns because they would fill in with newer sediment. So, even if the fulgurite itself was gone, there should still be evidence of those all over the place throughout the geological column, right?
Correct. What
Yeah.
what they actually found. Most people don't realize this, but lightning is one of the factors of erosion. I think I've got a photo here somewhere where uh, it actually hits the edges of the Grand Canyon. And what happens in that instance, Sam, where the lightning actually penetrates the soil and leaves a effectively tubular hole in there, that fills up with water. As that water freezes, as it expands, ice, water turning to ice expands, I think by about 10 or 15%.
Yeah.
If you can imagine this process occurring multiple times during the year, those forces actually force the rock to crack. Those fissures then make the rock weaker, and big slabs of rock then fall to the surface. Lower down into the surface. But the interesting part here is when I did the maths on this, and I was trying to be a bit, I guess, in favour of them. I looked at the 4.5 billion years and said, okay, well, let's assume that 1 billion years was the cooling off period. So we looked at 3.5 billion years. I equated that into days, and then I looked at how many lightning strikes would hit the Earth, and how many fulgurites we would expect to find on Earth, on the dry land, by the way. And that came out to 1.1 by 10 to the 18th power. And when you then equate that to the actual size of the dry land, you get 7,411 fulgurites per square meter. Clearly ridiculous, right?
Be pure
But then,
fulgurite.
yeah, but then you say, okay, well, hold on, they wouldn't have been all on the surface. So I said, okay, if we distribute those evenly over the supposedly 19 layers in the geologic column, and I've listed them there from the Archean, Cambrian, Ordovician, etc., you get, where was it? Divided by 9, you get an average of 390 fulgurites per square meter per geologic column layer. Even that sounds ridiculous. Now, that's a lot of fulgurites, as you can see, right? But compare that to the erosion rate of 6 centimeters. This is an average erosion rate, a secular erosion rate, which they've determined as 6 centimeters per 1,000 years. So when you consider that 6 centimeters per 1,000 years, and their own literature says they would expect the entire dry land surface on Earth to erode down to sea level within 10 to 12 million years, you can see the problem here. But more importantly, if you compare that to a 10,000-year-old Earth, you get 0.02 fulgurites per square meter. Which one makes more sense, guys? It's ridiculous to think that these lightning strikes only occurred during the surface layer. We don't find any fulgurites in the preceding layers. Nowhere have I found any literature that says they found fulgurites in preceding layers below the surface. So that's really, this is the one here, Sam. The Grand Canyon apparently sees the most lightning, 15,000 strikes at the National Lightning Detection Network, most prevalent along the rim of the canyon.
Yeah.
So most strikes occur during the monsoon season. So you can imagine what those lightning strikes are doing to the canyon walls in terms of its erosion. And there's some references there if people want to read about it. But get their email and I'll send them a link to my document and they can read it for themselves. But yeah, that's pretty much it, really, on the fulgurites issue. I mean, if there are any questions, I can see if I can answer them.
Yeah, northern Arizona gets a lot of lightning the monsoon is in the summertime, and then they also have the storms in the winter. They get a lot of rain, actually, more rain than we do here in California, and a lot of lightning storms. And a lot of those lightning storms are dry lightning storms, which are, those are the ones that start the fires all the time in the summertime, like right now. So,
But,
I've been out there, and the way that those fulgurites form is it's not just like a straight line, so they're all branched out. So anytime there's a landslide, that should be exposing new fulgurite veins if their deep time assumptions are true, right?
And the other interesting fact, Sam, a lightning strike as it gets closer to the surface of the Earth actually splits in two. So you get two strikes for every lightning strike. But I like what Doki has written. It says, erosion didn't exist in the deep past. Evos are guilty of believing a flat Earth. I love it.
So true.
And that point about water getting down in there and freezing and expanding. Anyone that has kids and they've put a soda in the freezer and forgot about it, you learn that it expands quite a bit fast.
Yes. Yeah.
Blows up all over the freezer.
Well, put a bottle of beer in the freezer and see what happens. Yeah.
Yep. Won't last long. And that's what's great about these kinds of evidence is they really put a damper on the evolution, because remember, these layers for them are millions of years, millions. So they would have to say now that lightning didn't occur during these times, or maybe that area was underwater. They have to now be the one to go for these ridiculous rescue devices, and we could just take the evidence as it is. So what you're looking at there is one of the rocks on the top that's been hit by lightning multiple times. So, if more layers were forming in 100 million years from now, we would have layers over this, and we would be able to dig down, and we would see that these lightning was very prevalent and high in those things. So when we go up to this other image that George showed, do you notice something? The lightning hit the top layer and went through all of them. How come, if lightning was doing this in this region, how come we don't see at least one lightning bolt somewhere around in this area to the right in these lower layers and going through the other areas?
Yeah,
we don't see it. So that's what George is telling us all, is that these lightning strikes that we see going through the layers are all on the upper part, the layers that were laid down after the flood. There was nothing laid down new after that time, right? So we have layers, and then we have lightning strikes. That's it.
Well, Matt, the best rescue device I've heard on this one has been, we don't know. And I said to them, well, I'm coming to you from what we do know. I said, we do know that lightning hits the surface of the Earth. We do know lightning creates fulgurites when it hits the surface. And I said, we do know the Earth's surface is made out of layers. And I said, we do know that you think those layers are millions to billions of years old. So we do know that fulgurites should have occurred in the layers preceding the surface. So I'm coming to you from the point of what we do know, and then you're telling me we don't know. See, they won't even accept basic logic, because it destroys their worldview, and they can't accept it. They go, oh, we don't know.
Yeah.
How often have you heard that? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, but, we trust it anyway. There it is. There it is. There's your faith.
But, Matt, if we say we don't know, gotcha!
They'll have a whole video like they did against Kent, going, I wasn't ready for that. Whole video, Yeah. Their goal is different than ours. Our goal is to present evidence to them that they might make them go, oh, that's a good point. I should really consider, that. No, genetic entropy isn't true. So what, the cold plates are down there? All that proves is, I don't know. It doesn't matter. We'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
You got a question, George?
Standard there,
Yes, I did, Doki. I think we've covered that isochron dating issue plenty of times. I think I even actually tackled that in one of the Grand Canyon streams that we did, where we showed the eukaryote lava flow. was actually compared to the actual igneous rock at the Great Nonconformity, and they and they compared. Apparently, the isochrone method is supposed to be a very accurate method, yet the errors that they got were like into the hundreds of percentage wrong. I can't remember the numbers, but the dating figures were like a couple of billion years difference or something, which is ridiculous. And they always say to you, the dating methods corroborate each other. Well, what a load of baloney, you know. I can show you countless examples where different dating methods were used and different results were obtained. I mean, one of them was the KBS Tuff, the Skull 1470, I think. They got a range of dates that didn't agree with their scenario. So at the end of it, I think it's in one of the Ian Juby videos, they actually went to and adopted a different radioactive decay rate to get the answer that they wanted. And the other one was, I think there's a good article in CMI called The Footprint Fiasco. Have a read of that, and you'll see how ridiculous this scenario is, where a group of scientists in America had done dating methods on this rock layer where these footprints were found, and also another group of scientists in Britain were also doing the same research, and they got totally different answers. I mean, totally different answers with totally different methods. It's a joke. It is really a joke, and people don't realize that they just cherry pick these dates just to fit in with their invented geological layer periods.
My favorite is when they say, you can't test a living organism for carbon dating. You can't test a shell of an animal. You can't test dinosaur bones for carbon dating. All that's contamination. It's like, well, you can't do it. Then why did they? They literally tested it and got dates that they shouldn't have. So if they can't do it, why didn't somebody tell the scientists that? I mean, what kind of logic is this, right? The internet atheist knows more than pretty much every scientist you'll ever meet. That I've learned.
Yeah, Big Bad Mama made a comment on one of the videos, I think the other day, during the Ken Hovland discussion we had on the geological layer about how radio dating destroys young Earth creation. So I provided a response to that, and I gave secular references to this, by the way, Matt. And if I can share the screen again, I'll show the subscribers just exactly what I'm talking about. I haven't invented this. This is purely. Oh, there's that recumbent fold. See those folds there?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys, they can never form under a wind situation or an Aeolian situation.
That's water.
Yeah, so here's my response to Big Bad Mama, but Donnie wouldn't give me enough time to cover that one, so I'll let it go. But I addressed it in another video where she made exactly the same point on one of Kent's videos. But this is from the natural radioactivity in the geologic environment from the National Nuclear Security Commission. You can see there radioactive elements in soil. Secondary deposits form due to the leaching of uranium from minerals and chemical weathering. Okay, then loss of potassium. Potassium leaching from the soil fluctuates in accordance with the quantity and intensity of rainfall. There's a link there. And you can see as much as 80% of the potassium, which will increase the ratio of argon, and the result is false old age dating. That's because of leaching. Here's another one written by Roger Eckhart for the Isotope and Nuclear Chemistry Division. Same thing. He talks about most people are aware that rainfall, as it seeps into the earth, becomes laden with dissolved material or solutes. What they may not realize as fully is that the composition of the solutes can change drastically as the water passes from one geochemical environment to another. That defeats those arguments they put forward on dating of these things, because they measure these isotopes, and you can see from the leaching that can occur that you'll get inflated old ages purely because of that reason. The same reason with the carbon-14, by the way, leaching of carbon-14. One guy, I think you guys might have seen his name, Sam Burns.
Oh yeah,
gosh.
Yeah, well,
he's been banned. I thought.
Yeah, he argues that George wants us to believe that leaching washed away C14 but left the C12. I got fed up with him. I said, mate, there is 1 trillion, there is one carbon-14 atom to 1 trillion carbon-12 atoms. I said, which one makes the most difference? If you wash one of each atoms, what happens? You're still left with trillions of carbon atoms and less carbon-14 atoms. But he can't get it. He can't understand it.
Well, he just admitted contamination.
Right. So therefore,
he
the
just
dates that
refuted
he believes
himself.
in, exactly, you got him, Sam. You know, he believes that the dates are accurate, but if it's not, it's contaminated. Wait, you just threw out everything you believe in by admitting there's they're not accurate. What is it? You're going to believe it all the right or not at all? Okay.
I just shared an image. I don't know if you can pull it up. For whatever reason, I'm not able to share my screen. It keeps saying that it won't. I don't know what's going on. But if you go to, there's some folds right there. You see those?
I'm on my phone. I see it. Oh, that's a good picture.
You think you can figure out how to get that on there? I don't know why I can't put it on.
Yeah.
Let me try one more time. Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting me share my screen. It says that it doesn't have permission from Google.
Ooh, Google.
Ooh.
I know. I guess they dictate what I can and can't do.
And Matt, I have to go in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, me too. But it's okay. I'm emailing that to myself. There we go. Download.
Okay. George, you'll like this. I'm sure. Yeah. You'll like this photo here.
Uploading now.
Cool.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
How will they explain that one? Little bit of folds in there. No cracks. Look at that.
Man.
Isn't that wild?
That looks awesome.
And just up high in the middle of nowhere. Like, where'd the rest of it go?
That's crazy.
Those rescue devices of it happened deep underground at high temperatures can easily be debunked by doing exactly what Andrew Snelling did at Pete Sandstone, by taking samples and looking at the crystal structure of the rock. If the crystal structure of the rock doesn't show any evidence of metamorphism, then it wasn't heat that caused it. Because if it was heat, there'd be evidence of the crystal in the crystal structure.
Man. Yeah, that had to get lifted up pretty quick.
Yeah, there's another one. I tried to get a good photo of it. I need to go back. There's a spot kind of by my house where there's some sandstone, and there's some marks like that in it that are really wild, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, get some pictures. That would be awesome. I want to we've pretty much covered that. We can go over these other things that I brought up later next time.
Oh, these are your I've seen videos of these people where they walk up the trees, Matt.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah. I'm going to share that next time. A different video, though. This is geologic layers, right? My favorite thing that I always bring up, I bring it up all the time, I like to sink it into people's heads, is the geologic layer that we see is going to have uranium at the bottom because it's the heaviest and most dense element that there is. And it just happens to date the oldest. If it was the other way around, evolution would be through. Unfortunately, lighter elements date younger. That's just the way it is. So argon, potassium, all of those are at the top and they date the youngest. and they have the least atomic mass and size and weight. So what do we get? We get uranium, which dates the oldest, and it's the deepest. It shouldn't be rocket science. That's why they date the way they do. And then sometimes volcanoes pick up those deeper rocks that contain this older uranium and eject them to the outside. And now we get dates that are just all over the place. So we're going to have some discrepancies. That's fine, though. For the most part, the flood deposited just took all of those different elements during the flood and just sank them down, because that's what's going to happen. As you said, water washes out these elements and it pushes them deeper down, right? You can rinse out potassium from a rock, or radioactive potassium. It gets washed away in distilled water. So when it rains, it pushes it deeper into the earth. And look at the discrepancies we have. If we literally have uranium coming out of the earth and being pushed out, look at where we find it. It's all over the place. It's in Australia mostly. Where you live, George?
Yeah, well, we know that I think it was 33% of the world's uranium is found in Australia, and I think it's 23% of or 20% of the thorium is also found in Australia. So it's a pretty radioactive continent. Wear a lead suit if you come over.
Does it give you superpowers?
Oh yeah. I've got a tail growing behind me here. So.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked that video. Yeah, I made it nice and short. I think it's like 4-minute video. That was my ultimate one. And I put that together because of Erica and her radiometric dating on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, saying that it's proof that it's spreading away. And I go, no. If your predictions were true, it'd be the opposite. And would I be willing to talk about the Shroud of Turin? Yeah. I'm still working on that book, by the way. My editing has gotten me on page 130 out of 240, so I'm almost done. Give me a couple more weeks and I'll be done with that one. But looks like it's time for me to go as well. Anything you guys want to finish up on? Go ahead. I'll give you the floor.
Well, yeah, just real quick, there's another rock layer that I talked to Org about. I asked his opinion on it. And there's this rock, there is a layer here by my house. There's a cliff, bunch of different layers in it. And one of the layers has these big round rocks, like river rocks in it. And I asked him what would explain that. It would had to have been something violent enough to bring those rocks over, to tumble them, to make them round, but also gentle enough to not disturb the layer underneath, according to his model. From a flood model, easy to explain. And he didn't really have a good answer for that one either. So I guess I probably need to take some pictures of that so you guys can see it better. But it's just cool. You have all these layers, but one of them has these big round river rocks in it.
Wow.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me, there's another thing to bring up next time I come on too. But it's not with layering, so it'll be perfect for the what in the world? Where do you come from? Get out of here!
I'll leave you with this, Matt. Just ask the Evos, where are the millions to billions of years of Fulgurites in the preceding layers?
Yeah, simple, right? We can ask them so many questions that they just have to say, I don't know. And that makes them look bad, because there should be. Where's the bioturbation? Where are the Fulgurites? There you go.
One of the rescue devices, Matt, has been they were eroded away, but there's no evidence of erosion in those layers.
Yeah. Well, what Sam said, they're a hollow tube. I mean, we can see volcanic tubes that run under volcanoes called lava tubes. We can see those, but we can't see lightning tubes. Why not?
Yep.
Why would they corrode, but another tube made by lava would not? What's the difference? Just makes no sense.
Add the two together, erosion and Fulgurites, and you get a young Earth.
Yep. That'll be the next one. We'll do erosion rates.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun one. We'll do that randomly sometime.
Okay. All right, guys. I got to get into my gym gear and head off for a gym session and yoga.
Awesome. No, thanks for joining us, man.
No, I haven't had breakfast yet, Matt.
Got to get it.
Nice to see you, Sam.
Yeah, you too, George. God bless you guys. Take care. Everyone in the chat, take care. You
See
too,
you
Matt.
guys. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Till next time. Mm, mm, mm.